I ask myself, why is it that I can talk to a friend about what's happening in my life, but I find it hard to say I need help? I find it hard to say I'm struggling in this area of my life. Why is it that it's easy for a friend to tell you what's happening with the latest football match or to talk about what's happening, the rumors in class, but it's hard to simply say, I'm not feeling my best right now? Now, I think that the fear that comes from talking about it is stemming from three things: the fear of rejection, the fear of judgment, and the fear of being taken seriously. When you're struggling, we've been conditioned to believe that it's a weakness for you to admit it. We've also been conditioned to believe to say that vulnerability is a weakness. When you are in an accident and you break your leg and a doctor tells you you have to wear a cast, you proudly walk around with a cast on your leg. But when you're struggling with your mental health, it's hard to voice those words. And even if you do find the courage to say you need help, it's often hard for the person listening to hold space for you. It's hard because, what do you say? We're not even taught the language to say when someone says, I'm struggling or I have depression. We don't have that language yet. So there's often this awkward silence that follows the statements. There's often this I don't know, stare where people don't know what to say, and and the dreaded takuwa poa, usijali. There's a lot of that because we don't have the language, right? And so what ends up happening is that when a person struggles with their mental health, they don't want to hear utakuwa poa. They don't want to hear that someone I know, someone's father, someone's mother has been through that. They kind of just want to be understood. They kind of just want to be empathized with, and they just want to feel supported. But are we prepared to have this language? Are we prepared to have these conversations when someone close to us struggles and says they need help? I think we're not, which is why conversations on mental health are often shrouded in stigma. We can talk about all of these things every day, but until we're ready to offer support or to empathize with the person struggling with the mental health or to understand their struggle, we will not offer the kind of help that the person needs. Now, according to the World Health Organization, 1 in 4 people struggle with a mental health or neurological disorder. This means, count yourself, 1 of you, if you're 4, struggles with their mental health. In Tanzania, a straggling 63.9% of people currently are living with mental health issue or neurological disorders but show no symptoms of it. This means that a lot of us have mental health problems that we do not know of. And only 13.71% of people struggling are reported to have depression. So why do we have this disparity? How is it that there are more people suffering and only less people reporting it? Why do we have this disparity? I think we have the disparity because we don't know how to hold conversations on mental health. And we are distracted. We have so many people on social media with our phones and our little gadgets, and we know what's happening to a person in the US, but we don't know what's happening to our friend next to us. Our families don't know how to support us. They don't know how to give us the right language when we say we're struggling. And because of this, I think we're all living in a perpetual state of darkness. But there's hope. When you're struggling with your mental health, oftentimes you find what you need to hear is that you're not alone. And the beauty in that is that we all have struggles. It's not unique. We all have struggles. We're all struggling with something in this room right now. And if you're brave enough to have that conversation, you just want to hear that you're not the only one going through it. So, I started this conversation by saying I'm going to tell you a few stories. And before I tell that story, I need us to understand 3 things, right? When a person suffers from mental health, and this, by the way, is not just limited to mental health, but for the sake of this conversation, let's talk about mental health. You need to be empathized with, right? You need someone to offer you compassion, and you need someone to offer you understanding. These 3 things can go a long way for you to find those words to simply say, I need help. If someone can offer you the space to say that, then you will be able to survive whatever struggle that you have. Or at the very least, know that you're supported as you're struggling through that. Now, a few years ago, personally, I struggled with my mental health. And no one knew. I was excelling in class. I had a lot of things going right for me. I couldn't pinpoint what was wrong, but I still struggled. The worst part of it was that I was doing so well, it was hard to believe I was struggling. I took the step by asking for help. I went and talked to someone and I said, I'm struggling. My first conversation on mental health, the person listened to me and said, sounds like you may be depressed. Now, I think I'm well read. I've spent my entire teenage years reading a lot. But this was the first time I was hearing the words depression uttered to me. And through that story, through that journey that I had with this person who I spoke to, I was able to learn about this portal, this portal of a world that no one in my life had ever introduced to me. So I walked into the mental health world because I was struggling. Now, I know there's some of you here who may be going through something similar, or you know someone who's going through something similar. So, based on my story, based on what happened and what I experienced, I learned the 3 things that we need to do. If someone comes to us and wants to talk to us about their mental health, or if you want to talk to someone about your mental health, the first thing you need to do is to listen. Listen and believe when the person tells you they're struggling. Oftentimes, we don't know how to utter the words. Like I said, we don't have the language yet. We're not a community that fosters those kinds of conversations. So when a person tells you that they're struggling with their mental health, believe them. They don't have to be crying all night, sleeping in all day. They may be excelling. They may be at a TEDx conference right now, watching. Believe them when they say they're struggling. The second thing I think we should do is offer empathy. Now, simple terms, empathy is simply to put yourself in the other person's shoe. Now, that may be difficult for some of us, right? But instead, if you choose to do number 1, if you believe that a person is struggling, you don't have to have reasons. You don't need to see scientific proof that this person is struggling. Like I said in the beginning, if you're in an accident, you have a cast, right? You have proof that someone is injured. You don't need to see that. You can simply believe them and offer empathy to them. Understand. Say, hey, I may not be struggling like that, but I've been through something similar. I get it. I'm struggling in this. Maybe it's not my mental health, but I get it. Offer that empathy because that's all someone needs to hear. And finally, we need to break the stigma. Now, stigma comes because we don't talk about mental health. It's hush hush. I started having conversations on mental health in my household after I started suffering with my mental health. No one prepared me for that. So how do we break the stigma of this thing that's so taboo, this thing that no one talks about? We're so carefree to talk about other things and yet find it difficult to simply talk about our minds. You educate yourself. Educate yourself about mental health. You educate yourself. You believe experts when they tell you about mental health. But more than that, challenge yourself to break through the stereotypes we attach to people who are struggling. Just because someone is maybe suffering a little bit and doesn't show it, doesn't mean they don't need help any less. And in the same wave, just because someone isn't suffering or showing symptoms of suffering, doesn't mean they need help any less. We only challenge the stigma by breaking these stereotypes and offering conversation. Look to the person next to you. Have you asked how they are? Really? Do you know what your closest friend is going through? And not even a closest friend, that classmate in class that doesn't really speak much, you know? Your sister, your brother, your dad, you know? And don't get me, I don't actually have the time to get into men and mental health and how men really do not have the space to talk about their mental health. So if you or you know someone that's struggling with their mental health, or you don't know someone that's struggling with their mental health, but you can sense that this person may not be okay, start by asking, how are you? How are you really feeling? And if you're asked that question and you don't know how to answer, look inside. Really say how you're feeling. I don't know, but maybe I'm not feeling so great. It's okay. And it's perfectly okay for you to not be feeling so great. So I'd like to finish this by saying, DIA, you've set up this platform where we're talking about going beyond the narrative. This is one way to have these conversations. The fact that we're here, we're listening to this, I'm saying this, I'm telling this story, I hope inspires you to also tell your story, to listen to others who tell theirs as well. Because the beautiful thing is, with storytelling, is that whenever a story is told, or you read from a book or a movie that you like, there's a portal that opens. And you find yourself relating to the characters. You find yourself relating to the storylines. Maybe the stories that need to be told now are the ones that we don't really have a chance to talk about. The ones shrouded in mental health. The one that you may be able to tell. So I hope as we leave this platform here today, you have these honest conversations. First with yourself and then with the people next to you and close to you. Thank you for listening.